Welcome everybody for this third webinar, this third AFAN webinar. Today we're going to discuss about tools, science, and best practices in fire analysis. I'm Raphaël Suplisson. I'm come from the French National Fire Officers Academy in Aix-en-Provence, and I will present this webinar with the different experts. Thanks for joining us. Before presenting all of our speakers today, let me do a brief reminder on the AFAN project to better understand what is the difference between this project and others talking about wildfires. AFAN is a European project funded by the European Union Civil Protection. It started on January 2021 and will end at the end of May this year. You have different partner from this consortium, Pau Costa Foundation, the Bombers from Catalonia, DREAM in Italia, and SOS, the French National Officer Academy, Valabre, which is a school dedicated in fire and wildfire in France, and you have also the South Wales, the Fire and Rescue Service. The AFAN objectives are to contribute to build towards a shared European framework of fire analysis or assessment to identify current knowledge, existing gaps, and opportunities. This action aims at building up fire analysis capacities, harmonizing existing fire assessment knowledge across Europe through a joint network of wildfire emergency responders and training centers willing to build capacities in that area. And so we identify the whole range of fire analysis competencies that firefighting organization can develop in order to face key fire problems, focusing on the path to improve decision-making during the response phase. We had different deliverables to create during this project. These are mentioned here. The map of the existing fire analysis expertise and knowledge across Europe made by ENSOS. So for the map, there is a link that we are going to share in this conversation, in the discussion. Please feel free to answer to it. This will help us a lot in our work. We also created guidelines on fire analyst competencies and skills. The Bomberos of Catalonia did that with the consortium, that are based on existing technologies, science, and resources, guidelines on the use of tools, science, and best practices for fire analysis, guidelines on remote assessment teams. We had also other results, state-of-the-art of the Atlantic and Northern European countries on fire assessment capacities, relevant fire analysis resources translating. And here are what we already did and what we need also to do after. So in blue, it's what we've done, and in dark, it's what we are doing right now. And so today, this AFAN webinar will be dedicated on the database and the writing of the guideline. So in this webinar, we invited two different experts from all over Europe to see examples of tools, science, and best practices they use when they do fire analysis. These examples will serve to create this guideline and will be added to our database. Here's the agenda program of this webinar that will last 2 hours. 6 experts will speak with 10 to 15 minutes each. After all speakers, there will be 5 minutes of questions and answer. You can ask your question in the chat and also in the question answer tool at the bottom of your screen. Let's begin the first round with Detlef Maushake from Germany, the Waldbranteam team. He will speak about Germany fire analysis method, the analysis tactics. Detlef, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Raphael. Trying to share my screen now. So I hope the screen's up. Can you?
Yeah, it's working.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, thanks for inviting us. Germany is not one of the countries known for big fire analysis history, but we are moving towards a time of more fire danger, more fire activity. So we're in the process of building more competence in this field. So it would be really basic what I'm to be talking about. It's not as advanced as the craft bombers or anybody involved in that field for years, but we have taken the step, and I'm happy to present our findings so far. Let's see. Yeah. Germany is consisting of about 95% volunteer firefighters, and we have a 5% full-time. There are no designated forest fire crews, so the knowledge and the special training, if we can look at the firefighting itself, is very, very, almost non-existing, and we're building it with our agencies in Germany, try to step forward to enhance that knowledge, because that's the first step in the analysis and understanding of fire behavior. Two ground firefighting force units using vehicles are operational or on the way to being operational, one in Lower Saxony and one in the North Rhine-Westphalia area, to be ordered by the EU mechanism as a module. So we're stepping forward to supplying help to other countries being affected by wildfires. Our forested areas are about 50% pine and fir. It's a mixture of forests. We have a lot of broadleaf forest too. And as you can see in the left picture, it's we have a lot dieback, and that's the Harz Mountains there in our range here. The other part of the forest is a huge open land area. It's mostly agricultural use and a lot of heathlands, and there are also army installations and a lot of unexploded ordnance in our fields due to military training and also the Second World War remainders. We have a change in vegetation caused by drought and higher temperatures, leading to a different approach to fire behavior in the field. So we now have fires in areas where there weren't none in the past, and also a different fire behavior there. So where do we find our fire behavior analyst? And that's that term. I just used the American term because we didn't find we called a fire analyst. And a fire behavior advisor would be the direct part. So he finds himself in the incident command post with a forestry representative and above the divisions that are doing the fighting in the field. Usually we supply two fire behavior analysts as a team. One would be at the incident command post and one would be in the field taking the measures like weather readings, rate of spread and stuff. I will display in a second. So we are more or less just advisors. So we don't make tactical decisions. That's up to the incident commander, or if you go down to the division level, the division officer. The German names would be different, but that's the setup where you can find the fire behavior analyst. So up to now, there is no meteorologist in that field, and we can see that in the future, that also meteorology will take a big part in that, in addition to the fire behavior analyst. The German Weather Service issues forest fire predictions. The left one is the so-called Waldbrandgefahrenindex, meaning the forest fire index. The right one is the what we call the grassland fire index. Displays the open land and like heathland and crop fields. The left one is solely for forests. Displays in 5 stages from 1 almost no danger up to 5 very high fire danger. And it's an advanced calculation from the M68 set up from the former German Democratic Republic. It's not just operational March to October, and there's one of the problems we're facing, that the season is not a season anymore, and we also have fire danger, very high fire danger in like the autumn times when the sun's coming up, but the danger, the fire prediction is not working at that moment. And because of the drought conditions, the fire danger rating underestimates the fire behavior in the field. We found that doing a prescribed burn in danger 1 conditions in grasslands, and the fire just exploded all over the place because the drought conditions are not considered properly in the M68 index. The Weather Service is looking at that right now in the project. The analysis capabilities, like I said, is very, very down. So we don't have a lot of them, and we need more experience. And that's because we're really happy to be in that group to share our knowledge or small knowledge, and also adapt stuff that can be used in Germany We're not Spain, we're not Portugal with the vegetation, and even not France with the vegetation and differences in fire behavior, but we're moving towards that, and we want to learn best practice to utilize in the field. We have the European Forest Institute with 2 fire managers with international approach. The names should ring a bell for people in this group. The Waldbranteam will an all-volunteer non-government organization. The training we do refers to the National Wildfire Coordinating Group courses, and our main personnel is trained as a firefighter 1. And we upgrade this with the 290 course intermediate wildland fire behavior. And that's the basic when the people get into the line of becoming a fire behavior analyst. We require the engine boss. It's not the American engine boss. It's called the Gruppenführer, or the engine leader course for Germany. So they have a tactical approach and communication for that. And sorry, we utilize a Kenpo prediction system. I hope I'm still online. My computer is telling me there's something wrong.
You're still.
Okay, great. We utilize a Kenpo prediction system with the alignment of forces that can be taught very easily to firefighters. It's a very easy system for the basic understanding of fire behavior in the field. And we have the fire behavior analyst course. We utilize, as you see in the picture, the belt weather kit, because it gives us a better understanding of weather features than just an electronic meter that you press a button. We found that very versatile and transferring very good knowledge about the weather influences on fire behavior. And then the right, you see a newly developed tool. It closes the gap between a simple sand table exercise and the sim table, which is highly advanced. It's from the German company Dräger, and it utilizes Rothermel calculations, so we can do a little tiny live real-time fire development, fire behavior model for teaching our behavior analysts and also the firefighters in the field. What we started doing is, if we start our analyst tactics, we get an alarm via the local command center telling us, okay, there is a huge forest fire. Can you supply us? So we're not a first-in asset now. That should be the goal in the future, so that the forest fire analyst or fire behavior analyst is one of the first features to support the ground crews in the field by fires of a certain size. We respond with a minimum of 2 analysts, and to have the communication link between the field and the incident command post. We designed checklists, so they are getting maps with links to different apps that you can draw your maps from. So we get an overview about the topographic features in the field where the fire is. I'm going to show you a picture how we do that. Then we go in the field, make a real good fire size up on the ground, rate of spread, perhaps get digital images being transferred to the incident command post to show how the fire is moving, and remark that in a map. Where you can see the factors 0 to 3, so means what are the alignment of forces in the field at a certain point of the fire: backside, left flank, right flank, and the front. I just draw a picture of the Harz Mountains. I just made a mock fire in there. So we have a time, the wind at 4 miles per hour, which would go in kilometers per hour in Germany. The rate of spread at the front end, we have a trigger point identified. If the fire crosses that road, we might get different fire behavior than the fire backing down the hill. If I just have 10 minutes here, so usually we put more information in that map as our fire size up in the field takes place. So we were going to communicate this back and forth between the incident command post and the people in the field. We then utilize other apps, taking the stand of the sun to find out about the hot fuel areas over the day. We take into account the vegetation stand that we have there, and if there is a diurnal wind change possible. So we try to put everything together. For somebody really advanced in fire behavior analysis, that's a very, very basic approach, but you have to take into account that Germany is still in the first footsteps of becoming a fire-prone country. So we are moving forward. You can see the 10:30, which is the time right now on the Kenpo prediction map. So at 1700, we are predicting a diurnal wind change, which will influence the west flank at that time with the sun being on the downward side. So that's how we communicate between the field and the incident command post. And we have a planning period. The period goes till the next change, like 12:30 would be the hot fuel time for the south aspect. The fire is now moving on a southwest southeast aspect. That's page number 1. So the following pages will look the same. So you can get a little, like a picture, like a little movie over the time how the fire behavior changed. We have the factors marked here that are influencing fire behavior right now. And at the fire front, there will be a trigger point would be reached after that period that we are looking up on right now. We considered possible spotting with the 290 of the local weather indices. With the findings of the 290, you can make an estimate if you get spotting and how the ignition probability of ignition in the fuels forward the fire front are. We try to put that into the great picture, and we evaluate the possible of night operations if the fire sort of dies down in our sort of zone here. My conclusion would be we're in the early stages. We're trying to implement the words fire management instead of firefighting because we think that we have to take a different approach. Because Mother Nature will tell us if we start fighting fires and just keep everything small, everybody knows what's going to be happening in the future. And we have to find a way to transfer this into the forestry, the landowners, the politicians, to see that there might be a place to let a fire burn to a certain extent and rather manage the fire instead of just dousing the flames at every instant. We're looking into supporting widening of our network, and we're happy to exchange with other people interested in coming to our country and see how we do stuff here, and want to transfer our findings then into the German fire system if they're applicable. We can't transfer France and Portugal and Spain, like I said, to Northern Europe, but we can adopt best practices to make the environment at the wildland fire a little safer. That concludes my presentation. I hope I didn't step over the time, and I'll stop sharing my screen. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for this presentation. I have a few questions because there is no question on the Q and answer. For the forest fire prediction that you guys are using, is your map publicly available on the internet, or is it more like a private space?
I didn't get what do you mean is available on the internet?
On the forest fire prediction, you know, the map that you showed.
Yeah.
With the fire danger.
Yeah, that's open source. It's there is a point agricultural weather in the German Weather Service, and they supply that weather information in the time that they offer it between March and October. It's freely approachable by everyone.
Okay. Could you send the link in the discussion for sharing this just the link?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. I can post it, no problem.
Thank you very much. I have also another question about the Sonderville. It was the map like you shot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry for my German.
No, don't try German. It's hard. No, the Sonnenverlauf is an app on our devices where you can use your location or a chosen location wherever that is. So if we're on the route to a fire, I can pick the location where the fire is and get the movement of the sun is displayed over the day. So I can say what time we will have sunrise, sunset, when the hot zones or the hot fuels are on which aspect. So it gives us a good indicator in forward being en route to the fire.
Okay, very nice.
I don't know if it's international available, but I guess there are different apps on the internet that you can kind of access to get that information.
Okay. Thank you very much for this presentation, and now we're going to go for the next one with Anna Henningsson from Sweden. She's a fire expert, and she will talk about Sweden fire analysis methods and vision. Off you go, Anna.
Yes, I will start sharing my screen. Just a second. So can you please let me know if you can see the screen I'm sharing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Henningsson, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer for the Fire and Rescue Service of Eastern Blekinge. It's the southeast coast of Sweden. I started my career as a professional firefighter in 1990. And my fire department consists of 250 firefighters and fire officers at 11 fire stations. So it's a pretty small organization. In the two major towns in my area of jurisdiction, Karlskrona and Ronneby, we have both a large naval base and an air force base. So I heard what my colleagues in the previous part of this said about explosives and hazardous materials around the airfields and the training areas. We have also the third highest building in Sweden. That's a challenge in itself. It will be a fire occur in the top of the building. But besides forest fires during the dry period, during spring and summer, of course, there are a lot of incidents and accidents according to the military activity. Fighter jets dropping down in the forest and of course cause forest fires in itself, but they also have this loaded machines with weapons, and we have other, not even the risk of forest fires, but also the risk of explosives when the firefighters get too close to the burning vessel and the burning forest. I'll go for the next picture. I'll try to switch picture, but I don't think you can see my next picture. Am I right?
If you try to, yeah, if you click OK.
Yeah. So from my domains of expertise, I would say my domains are incident commands, liaison, aerial firefighting, tactics, and strategical planning. I've been serving as both incident commander and the liaison officer during a great number of fires and accidents since the early 90s. I'm also the instructor in aerial firefighting and tactics for fire officers, for the Swedish Air Force, helicopter crews, management personnel, and the new civilian pilots of the light helicopters and pilots from Saab who flies the fire bosses, which are new to Sweden. We didn't have this kind of vessels before 2019. I trained in Italy in 2015 in operating Canadairs and helicopters, because in Sweden we have a very large forest fire back in the 2014, when we get help from other countries in the European Union, like French, Italy, Portugal, and several other countries. And we got to know the hard way in Sweden that we didn't know much about fighting large forest fires at all. The tools we are using today are the fire weather index. I think most of you are familiar with that. It's for the effects of fuel moisture and wind on fire behavior and the spread of fire and also the risk of ignition. We used the registration of lightnings, which is provided by the Swedish Meteorological and Hydrological Institute for prediction of forest fires after thunderstorms. We have a lot of lightning strikes in the summertime in Sweden, and every lightning may cause a fire. And we also use the CTAC for strategical and tactical planning. The pictures you can see down to the right is one CTAC tactical planning of one forest fire. And the picture to the left is one example from the fire weather index, which shows the fine fuel moisture code, the risk of ignition from I think it's one day last August, when it was really, really dry in the southern part of Sweden. This picture shows how we use the tools by look at the lightnings struck some days before we get back in time and see how has the lightnings struck Sweden, and we combine these data with the fire weather index in order to see where are the hotspots when we can predict fire 2, 3, maybe 4 days after the lightning has struck, and we then can get vessels up in the air who can look over a larger area and look for these rather small fires in order to get to the fires before they had spread and become large ones. My last picture, lessons learned, short way. Of course, the climate change. In Sweden, we experience the period some 20, 15 years ago was from late June to, I would say, mid-August. And now we have forest fires late April. The season lasts until September, maybe October. We have more fires, larger fires, a different fire behavior from the earlier years when many of my fellow colleagues as fire officers went to school and learned about forest fires. And the variety in level of education is a hard challenge. Firefighters, fire officers, pilots, because in several years between the middle of the 2000 centuries, like 2005, Sweden sold most of the helicopters from the Swedish armed forces, and we didn't get any new vessels for fighting fires from aerial forest firefighting ability until 2019, except for a few vessels. So the knowledge and the skills among firefighters, fire officers, and helicopter or airplane crews were on a very low level. So we have a lot of education to do to try to raise the level of knowledge in how to fight forest fires. And of course, how to use these tools for analysis, because they are new to Sweden since 2018, I will say. It was the first summer that we really used the tools and try to predict fire behavior and fire spread from the tools. So we are very new to this. There's also a great lessons learned in how to get the best out of the vessels, the coordination between air and ground, because we are not used to have these kind of vessels. So there has only been with us for a few years. So the most important lessons learned is that we in Sweden has a lot to learn from you other countries with a lot of greater experience from this kind of larger fires with a rapid fire spread, and you are much more used to use tools and vessels to fight fires from the air. I will stop there, and thanks.
Thank you, Anna, for this presentation. So I have a few questions. So if you guys, like the people that are watching this webinar, don't forget that you have the discussion and the Q and answer. If you want to ask questions about tools, best practices, that's why we are here today. I have a question for you, Anna. Where do you find the fire weather index that you presented? The fire weather index informations? Is it on EFIS, on an internal platform?
No, it's an open platform presented from our government, the Swedish Meteorological Institute. So it's free for everyone.
Okay, and can you like send us this link?
Yeah, of
in the
course.
conversation or by mail if you want.
Yeah, I will send it to you.
Okay, thank you very much. And do you know, so the service that is in charge of the calculation is the Meteorological Sweden Institute, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
They provide us all the data.
Okay. Okay, so we'll see if we have questions about this topic. So just to remind for those who join us in this webinar, as you saw, we decided to invite experts from all over Europe to discuss about tools, science, and best practices to upgrade our knowledge and our work that we're doing on the AFAN database. This database will gather examples of what organization is doing what, why, and how. Within our consortium, we have Spanish, Italian, and French that are prone areas to wildfire. We already have informations on their technicity. That is why we invited other countries like Germany, Sweden, and others, because we don't have their vision and their challenges. So let's travel and go to Greece this time, and we're gonna give the floor to Theodore Giannaros from the National Observatory of Athens. Weather and fire pyroconvective wildfire will be the subject. There you go.
Okay, thank you, Rafael. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
So, okay, good morning, everyone. I am Theodore Giannaros, and I am truly delighted to have been invited to this webinar to share our team's experience with extreme pyroconvective wildfires in Greece. As a researcher and a fire meteorologist, I believe that it is very important that we bring together the operational and research communities in order to advance our capability to deal with current and future extreme events. Before I move on to the main part of my presentation, I thought it would be useful to give you a very brief introduction of who I am and, more importantly, of where I work. So I'm currently employed as an associate researcher at the National Observatory of Athens, and more specifically, I work at the Institute for Environmental Research and Sustainable Development, and I am a member of the Meteorological Meteo Unit. The core mission of our unit is to carry out cutting-edge meteorological and wildfire-related research in order to support both communities and stakeholders with scientific knowledge that is translated into services, products, and tools. Very briefly, our activities include the operational monitoring and forecasting of weather, the development and application of tailor-made early warning systems, the conduction of socioeconomic analysis on high-impact weather-related hazards, and last but not least, the implementation of educational programs that aim at raising awareness about weather, climate, and other natural hazards. As a fire meteorologist, I lead the wildfire-related activities of our research group, and these activities include the development of various services that aim primarily at shifting the focus from suppression to prevention. And these services can be broadly divided into two main categories, as you can see on this slide. So the first category includes services and products that focus on monitoring and forecasting both fire weather and fuel conditions, while the second category includes more advanced services and tools that focus on the study and prediction of fire spread and fire behavior. If you are interested in learning more about these services and products, please feel free to ask me or contact me, and I will gladly share much more details with you. So without any further delay, now let's move on to pyroconvection. So the summer of 2021 in Greece, and more specifically August, will be certainly remembered for the widespread and persistent violent pyroconvection that took place in almost every large wildfire that our country had to face. Examples of this violent pyroconvection can be seen in the photographs shown on this slide, with perhaps the most notable being the pyrocumulonimbus cloud that formed above the Athens wildfire on the 5th of August. According to the European Forest Fire Information System, the 2021 fire season in Greece was the worst of the past 13 years, resulting in a total of more than 130,000 hectares of burnt area. And violent pyroconvection was an undeniable contributor to this record, as it is well known that it is associated with erratic and unpredictable near-surface winds, the downward transport of upper level, very dry air, and the increased potential for the generation of embers and their transport over very long distances. So when we talk about pyroconvection, we refer to the upward movement of the atmospheric air that is triggered by the heating that is caused by a fire. This means that by definition, all wildfires exhibit pyroconvection, as they can heat the air and force it to begin rising. However, pyroconvection becomes important when it gets violent, and this happens when you have a wildfire that ignites and spreads in an atmospheric environment that is conducive to the development of violent pyroconvection, which more typically manifests itself as towering pyrocumulus and pyrocumulonimbus clouds that form above the rising smoke plumes. So this implies that for violent pyroconvection to occur, you need to have the atmosphere coupled with the fire. And this coupling between the fire and the atmosphere is able to maintain and significantly modify fire behavior to an extent that goes very well beyond what is happening at the surface in terms of both fuels and fire weather. Violent pyroconvection and the associated formation of pyroclouds is as much an atmospheric phenomenon as a phenomenon related to the fire itself. These clouds form from the vertical development of a wildfire's convection column within the middle and upper troposphere. And the first step is that the intense heat released by a fire begins warming the air and forces it to begin rising. As the warm, low-density air rises, nearby cooler air is being drawn into the fire to replace the void. This allows for triggering the onset of a feedback circulation that tends to intensify the burning as more oxygen is supplied to the flaming zone. As the warm air continues rising into the atmosphere, it begins cooling and expanding due to the decreasing atmospheric pressure. So when it is cooled sufficiently, the water vapor that is present in the rising smoke plume begins condensing on the ash particles, eventually forming a cumuliform cloud that caps the smoke plume. Under conditions of intense burning and favorable vertical structure of the atmosphere, this cloud can evolve further to form a pyrocumulonimbus, as it happened above the Athens wildfire on the 5th and 6th of August. As I previously noted, all wildfires develop pyroconvection. However, not all wildfires have the potential to develop violent pyroconvection that manifests as pyroclouds forming above the rising smoke plume. For this to occur, there exist three key ingredients, all related to the state of the atmosphere. At the surface, conditions need to be hot, dry, and somewhat windy in order to support the intense burning of fuels and possibly the development of deep flaming. Above the fire, the lower troposphere needs to be dry, unstable, and with minimal wind shear in order to support the vertical movement of the wildfire's smoke plume. And finally, further up, where the condensation of water vapor takes place, there needs to be moist availability of moisture in order to maintain and strengthen the buoyancy of the rising plume. Altogether, these atmospheric conditions resemble a weather setup that is conducive to the development of elevated convection and subsequently to the occurrence of what we call dry thunderstorms. However, unlikely to a dry thunderstorm that can be triggered by the interaction between the airflow and topography, pyroconvection is triggered by the presence of the fire. Therefore, it is not uncommon, especially over high elevated areas, to observe both the development of dry thunderstorm clouds and pyroconvective clouds. And in fact, if one observes the development of dry convection above a region, this is a very good indication that the potential wildfire in the same region could well evolve into an extreme pyroconvective event. The first step in diagnosing the potential for the development of violent pyroconvection is to monitor synoptic weather patterns. This is because violent pyroconvection occurs most often during the transition from anticyclonic to cyclonic circulation. And most frequently, this happens when you have an upper air ridge associated with high pressure conditions at the surface that begins to weaken and gradually break down ahead of an approaching upper air disturbance, such as a trough. Now, focusing on the Athens wildfire that produced the pyrocumulonimbus cloud, we can see on the left that 2 days before ignition, Greece was still under the influence of a strong upper air ridge that had been persisting over the southeast Mediterranean for more than 7 days, resulting in temperatures exceeding 40 degrees Celsius and humidities well below 20%. And this synoptic pattern alone created a fire environment that could effectively carry on fire, suppressing the fuel moisture of finded fuels to about 6 to 7%. At the same time, we could see a long wave trough over northwestern Europe predicted to move towards a region in the following couple of days. And this particular synoptic situation was very alarming to us, since it was pointing to the gradual increase of atmospheric instability above our region due to the advection of mid-level moist air. This meant that should we have had a wildfire ignition as we did, the potential for violent pyroconvection would be very high. The escalation of the potential for violent pyroconvection can be more clearly seen in this diagram that shows the evolution of relative humidity above the Athens wildfire. At the surface, conditions were very hot and dry, supporting the intense burning of the fuels. And the very lower part of the troposphere, shown within the red box, was very dry and unstable, able to maintain the buoyancy of the rising smoke plume. Just above 1,500 meters in the middle troposphere, we could well see the advection of moisture above that region that increased the potential for elevated convection. So by the time we had the most violent pyroconvection and the formation of the pyrocumulonimbus cloud, we can see that the mid-level relative humidity reached its maximum values above a very dry near surface, above a very dry mixed layer. And this altogether increased the potential to have these extreme pyroconvective events. A very powerful tool when it comes to diagnosing pyroconvection is the SKU-T plot, which is a diagram that can give you a very comprehensive overview of the 3D structure of the atmosphere at a given time. On this slide, I am showing you the SKU-T derived from the radion sonde that was launched at the Athens airport a couple of hours before the formation of the pyrocumulonimbus cloud. If you first look at the surface, you have to notice how far apart are the two lines for the dew point, and the temperature. The dew point line is on your left and the temperature line is on your right. So what we can see here is that at the surface we have a very dry mixed layer, which is also relatively deep, extending up to 1,500 meters. And just above this layer, we have a moister air. You can see how the distance between the dew point line and the temperature line decreases, indicating the increase of moisture availability. And this particular pattern of increasing dew point depression with of decreasing dew point depression with height is what we call a typical inverted V profile, and this inverted V thermodynamic profile is very important, as it is very characteristic of events that support the occurrence of violent pyroconvection. We can also see that this particular structure of the atmosphere was favorable for elevating convection, as it is indicated by the presence of CAPE, which is the convective available potential energy. And also note that within the lower troposphere, within the lower and middle troposphere, the wind shear was minimal, or in other words, there was the wind speed and the wind direction did not exhibit any significant changes with height. So, summarizing my presentation, I would like to highlight some important take-home messages, at least in my personal view. The first thing to remember is that the occurrence, the development of violent pyroconvection requires the coupling between the fire and the atmosphere. It is a phenomenon that cannot be developed unless this coupling takes place. And when this happens, when you have the atmosphere coupled with the fire, you can expect that what you observe at the surface may be relevant for the fire behavior that the wildfire develops. What is more commonly known as that the fire creates its own weather. Regarding the prediction and diagnosing the potential for violent pyroconvection, this requires the implementation of a top-down meteorological approach that begins with examining synoptic weather and being aware of what we call critical fire weather. And this is because the development of violent pyroconvection occurs under very distinct patterns that are transitions between anticyclonic to cyclonic circulations. And also when you have critical fire weather, you can have the escalation of fire behavior, which is a prerequisite for getting the intense burning required to trigger the pyroconvection. Three key ingredients are required in order to get you violent pyroconvection, and all three key ingredients need to be present in order to have the formation of pyroclasts. These ingredients include the availability of mid-level moisture higher up in the atmosphere, about 1,500 meters. You need to have lots of moisture up there. You have to also have, we need also to have upper level instability in order to support the vertical development of the wildfire's plume. And also we need the minimal wind shear. Last, I would like to say that although we do have a relatively good understanding of the physics underlying the development of violent pyroconvection, there still exists much that we do not know. So in the future, we need to focus on understanding better how pyroconvection works and what happens when conditions may be favorable for the development of pyroconvection, but we do not get the formation of pyroclasts or vice versa. And for this, coupled fire atmosphere models are a very powerful tool that we need to fully exploit. However, the difficulty we have here is that we need more data, much more data and specialized data that is quite often very difficult to collect. And this specialized data may include vertical measurements, 3D measurements of fire behavior characteristics taken at the field when a wildfire evolves, and this could be obtained, for example, through radars, meteorological radars, or through the launch of radiosondes in the vicinity of wildfire. And with this, I would like to thank you for your attention, and in case you have any questions, I would be more than glad to try and answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Theodore. We have questions. Jelmer is saying, are you involved in fire suppression activities in Greece as a pyrometeorologist? Is your role included?
No, officially no. We have a memorandum of understanding with the Hellenic Fire Corps, and with this memorandum of understanding, we support them with several products and tools that I've shown you on the third slide, if I remember correctly. But we are not directly involved as a National Observatory of Athens in fire suppression activities at the field.
Okay, thank you for this answer. We have another question from Christos. Thank you for this wonderful presentation. Theodore, a question: is it possible to extinguish a fire that has evolved in such a way, or by that time, is it too late?
In my view, I believe that when you get a plume-driven wildfire that manages to develop such violent pyroconvection, it's almost impossible, at least as long as pyroconvection is evolving, it's nearly impossible to try and contain this wildfire. And what happens most commonly is that ground firefighting modules and aerial firefighters manage to contain such wildfires only when the fire weather conditions and the structure of the atmosphere allows for the intensity of the burning to lower, and then you can have this coupling between the fire and the atmosphere broken, so you can go there and contain the fire. It's really difficult to contain such monsters.
Okay. Another question: how your service is concretely involved in fire managing, and how your information goes to the field in the incident command post?
As I answered to Jelmer's question, unfortunately, we do not have an official link with the Hellenic Fire Corps, an official link that includes us at the incident command post and providing information in real time. We do provide some information that is, for example, we have a very dense network of meteorological stations all over Greece. It's about 490 weather stations, and this information, this live information of weather condition is directly fed into their incident command tool, the Engage system, which they use for managing incidents. But other than this, and regarding the analysis of wildfires and the prediction of the fire spread, there is no official engagement of us within their activities. However, we have also developed a rapid response fire spread forecasting system, the IRIS system, which they can also use at the Hellenic Fire Corps in order to get rapid predictions of fire spread. They have access to a dedicated web application where they can enter the coordinates of a wildfire, and this will trigger the implementation of the forecasting system at our computational infrastructure and give them a 6-hour forecast in about 20 minutes and a 24-hour forecast in about 1 hour. However, we are not directly involved operationally at the field or at the incident command center.
Okay, one more question from Pedro Sanchez. Once we are aware of the pyro-Q and pyrocumulonimbus are building by the use of radio sounding, is it possible to predict if they will collapse with some accuracy in order to reposition units in the field? What is your vision on that? Yes,
actually, pyroconvection is a subcategory of convection, which is an atmospheric phenomenon. So as convection itself follows more or less a diurnal cycle, I mean, you get all these thunderstorm clouds early in the afternoon at the peak of the heat from the solar radiation. So you can expect also the same on most occasions for violent pyroconvection. This is, for example, what we saw in the Athens wildfire. At least on the first day, we were seeing the vertical rise of the smoke plume, the development of some pyroceus, And as we were heading to sunset and the availability of solar energy was less, we could see this plume collapsing. But actually, this is also a very dangerous situation, because when you get all this plume collapsing, you get all the burning embers transported over very long distances, and you can get a new wildfire ignitions. About predicting how pyroconvection will evolve, there are tools that you can use. These are the SKUT plots, which are available from numerical weather prediction models. By having this predictive information, you can diagnose whether conditions will be more or less favorable for sustaining pyroconvection or giving the collapse and of the plume. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. On the slide number 9, you showed a very interesting plot figure.
Mm-hmm.
Where can you find this?
This information. This information is we currently produced it. This particular plot, I mean, it's currently produced on demand because it is for a specific point that was the Athens Wildfire. But we also run operationally our numerical weather models for the entire Europe at 10-kilometer resolution for the next 3 days. So such information, such as the one you see here, or the SKUT plot, can be produced literally for any point of Europe for the next 72 hours. And this information is updated twice a day.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Jelmer, are you ready right now?
Yes, but there may be some drilling in the background that will end at 5 past. So could I suggest a quick cup of coffee and start at 5 past 11?
Okay, is it possible, Celia, to do that?
Yes, sure. Just take 5 minutes break if you think, and we'll come back in 5 minutes. Yeah, good.
Thank you.
So if you guys have other question, we can, for Theodore or Anna, Maushake, maybe we can answer to it. Okay, let's go back to the AFAN webinar and following our presentation list with Jelmer. Jelmer, sorry. So Jelmer is from Netherlands, from the National Coordinator Wildfire Management, and he will speak about fire risk index in Netherlands and fire simulation. Jelmer, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank everybody to invite me. I'm very honored to be among fire analysts, as being, like Detlef said, the Netherlands is in the same situation as Germany. We're very much a developing country in the sense that wildfire management is very much in the early stages of development in the Netherlands. Let me try and share my. Okay. Do you see my screen?
This is working.
Yes. Okay. So as Detlef also mentioned, we use wildfire management because in the Netherlands it's such a broad spectrum that we still have to develop. I will focus on the way we deal with the challenges we have, and that will be focused in this sense not on prevention but on suppression and our way of working, how we do work with fire analytics. Just you have to know where we are from. So the Netherlands, you obviously probably all know that we are a very wet country, famous for our water management and traditions in dikes, and 40% of our country is obviously below sea level. So we're very advanced on water management perspective. But we forget sometimes, especially in society, that we also have a wildfire problem. And that's because of we're a relatively small country. We don't have a lot of nature, but because we have such a massive population of 17.2 million people, there's an extreme wildland-urban interface. So wildland or natural reserves always are in contact with society or human population. But we also have a wildfire problem. This is the view of EFIS in 2020, where we had 3 very big fires at the same time and 114 fire ignitions in that week. Obviously, this is stretching our capabilities, and we really have to adapt to a new situation under climate change. I'm from the fire service. So what are we? We've got 973 fire stations and about almost 24,000 personnel. Most of them are volunteers. But as you can see, we are very densely a network of fire stations. So we're very effective and very, we've got lots of toys to do the initial attack. Obviously, the whole country is flat, so that makes it easy. As I mentioned, lots of toys. Well, this is pretty much the main wildland fire capability that we have. As you see, they're all toys, very little knowledge, very little specific tools to fight bigger wildfires. So they're all based on the initial attack and all based on water. So in that sense, we're very much a developing nation in wildfire management. So our challenge is with relatively a lot of personnel for such a small country, and wildfires are a low frequency but a high impact phenomenon. Our urban firefighting force is basically untrained on wildland fire. And for me, I'm trained in the United States. This is a big worry, as I'm the national coordinator, and my biggest worry is that we'll have victims in the near future, because we send many people towards high-risk incidents without any training on that sense. As I mentioned, we've got many fire stations and we're very effective on Category 1 fires, so the low intensity fires, but we are our biggest risk is once it gets out of Category 1, how to deal with those fires. So it's very dangerous, anything above the Category 1 fire. This is 2020. We had 2 big fires simultaneously within a half an hour of this fire ignition. 710 hectares in the Pale and 220 hectares in 20 kilometers further on. This scope of fire is just unheard of in the Netherlands, and our whole management against those fires is just not capable. As you see, all urban firefighting techniques, also our suits are urban firefighting, helmets are urban firefighting, and everything is focused on water. So what are we doing now to specialize ourselves and to work with the tools that we have, and which tools do we have to develop? I started off with a group of wildfire tactical advisors that I trained more extensively in wildfire phenomenon and the tactics and the strategies that you can advise. They're integrated in our firefighting force at the moment. I've got 9 of them at the moment. We have developed a hand crew, which is a crew of 90. Of which 21 continuously can be put on a fire line. We've got fire investigators. That's been for a while now, several years. We've got a group of 20 wildfire investigators that are not sent out to fires enough, in my opinion. So we don't have the closed learning circle yet, but we do have them, and they are a very enthusiastic bunch. What we do have, and that's pretty well organized, is helicopters from the Army combined with a fire helicopter team. So the ground-air communication is very effective, and that our on-scene commander is always connected with the wildfire tactical advisor. So we're in good contact with our military personnel. We've set up a national wildfire support group. When there are more or several big wildfires in the country, we'll have a national wildfire support group. And we use in the preventive phase, but we also sometimes use it in the suppression phase, a wildfire risk assessment. As being such a close-knit country, we have a kilometer by kilometer a risk assessment of each cell in the Netherlands. And we use now, we just started with TechnoSilva, the wildfire simulation model. And that uses obviously our satellite vegetation model. That's a 5 by 5 meter vegetation picture of the 21 fuel models that we have. I will focus on these 4 elements a little bit more. Wildfire tactical advisors, group of 9, as I mentioned before. We're setting up international group with where we can send our people to educate them internationally. Some of them have done a course with Pau Costa last year, and I'm dedicated to send more this year again. So they can learn from the people that have dealt with fires more than we have. We automatically alert 2 wildfire tactical advisors to all big fires in the Netherlands. They are all part of the fire service, and they can work within those complex big incidents. One goes immediately on scene, and one stays behind initially for about an hour to gather all the information that the first one can use, and he will also use a fire simulation model, TechnoSilva. We also, obviously, like Detlef mentioned, we use the Campbell prediction system, which is a very simple way of looking where your windows of opportunities are. And obviously, our back office with a wildfire analyst is a future element. We do have our national group, but it's still very much in development. This is the National Wildfire Support Group. It's a flexible occupation, so that could range for anything from a logistics specialist to military specialists. And I'll end also with my ambition is to have a pyrometeorologist there, so we can all have that information within our organization as well. Obviously, we have some people that are specialized in satellite imagery, and they can support the people in the field with the latest information from our satellites. This unit will do the distribution of scarce units. For example, helicopters, we can probably get 4 Chinooks in the air, but at the moment it's organized that they can all only be bunched together. So we need to distribute them on the highest risk fires, and that this national support group will organize that. We use a lot of satellite imagery, and the big advantage is that they're not in the hectic incident ground and can look 24 hours ahead. And we have short communication lines in this group with different governmental bodies like the military, like other terrain owners, you name it. And my ambition is to include pyrometeorologists in this, so we can get those that very interesting data of Theodore right before this one, to get that implemented and integrated in our organization. The wildfire risk assessment, as I mentioned before, it's a complete analysis of the natural resources versus the risks. It's a 1 by 1 kilometer grid all over the Netherlands where there's a natural environment. There are 18 parameters ranging from vegetation, ecological, social, and suppression aspects. So you could have, for example, is there any water available in the area or not? Is there are there campsites? Are there any other social activities in the area? And that will all construct to a color coding, and that obviously helps a lot in the preventive phase, where you can pretty much work on all the red dots to get them back to either yellow or green. The aim of this system is to prevent deadly fires, not to prevent fires, but prevent deadly fires. If we can already in ahead of the incident see where the social risks are, then we can prevent it. It's based on the satellite vegetation map with 22 fuel models, and we've got an other setup which is still in a research and development phase. Using radar from satellite imagery and meteorological models, we are trying to get the actual fire risk on the basis of fuel availability, and that will change immediately the initial attack potential. So once the risk is getting higher, then we'll, instead of 2 fire trucks, we'll send 4 or even 8 at the first instance. Our fire sim model, we used to have a fire simulation model that we developed ourselves that was pretty much out of date, and nowadays we use fire sim, which is part of the Wildfire Analyst product of TechnoSilva, and we actually just started 4 weeks ago with training our wildfire tactical advisors. And we've done some initial modeling on old fires, and it's pretty accurate. Obviously works with the Dutch fuel models and our vegetation, satellite vegetation imagery. And we use a Harmony weather model, which is a product of our National Meteorological Institute. We have using this product, we have a direct overview of social impact and suppression possibilities. And this is something new that we didn't have before. Obviously, we always have been able to model the fire spread, but not a direct advice on suppression possibilities. This is a picture of a screen. This is a screenshot of one of our biggest fires in 2020, and you see our investigative data in correlation to the model data, and it's almost exact the same. So we're very happy with this this setup, and it gives us several opportunities to, within a matter of seconds, we can get initial attack assessment and a fire behavior index on that fire. And this can be a short report or a full report of several pages with all aspects of the potential fire behavior that we are facing now and in the coming 6 hours or even more. My ambition as the national coordinator is move to integrated fire management. Obviously, nowadays we're still doing very much suppression tactics from an urban perspective, and I would like to work to integrated wildfire management. We need nationally and in society create a paradigm shift, because like water, fire will have an important role to play now and in the future. It's something that's not in our society at the moment, but we need to use that discussion more and more. Focus will be on prevention, as we do pretty much zero on prevention, and the whole idea of and that's my role as a fireman, is to talk to society that we cannot deal with these large wildfires. So we need to prevent the large wildfires in the preventive phase. Within the suppression, it has to be lean and effective, because I'm not able to teach wildfire suppression skills to 24,000 people, while they never, the majority of those people will never face a wildfire. So that's not doable. So it has to be lean and effective. We need specialist knowledge, but using all our basic units, and safety is my biggest concerns, not only for the firefighters on scene, but also for all society, because our safety against wildfires depends on us. That's my story. I have a quick drawing which I use often in the Netherlands. We're very much used to fighting climate change and the water rise, and we use billions per year to build our dikes, but we're not paying attention behind our backs because our houses are burning. That's my chat.
Thank you very much. I like the I like the picture at the end. I have a question about the fire categories that you use. You said there where you can deal easily with the fire type 1 category. Could you develop how many of them they are, and what is the objective of categorizing fires?
Yeah, that's pretty much. I use the research of Theodore et al. I think it's 2016 research with 7 fire categories, and 5, 6, 7 are the mega fires, and 1, 2, 4 are the more or less European fires, and it divides the fires in fire line. Rate of spread, flame length, and fire line intensity, and in this sense, and that's why I use it in the Netherlands, because it makes so clear that our water delivery cannot deal with category 2 fires, and only can deal with the category 1 fires. And the climate change, it is proven that the categories are increasing. So category 1 fire is a 500 kilowatt per meter fire line intensity, and we can deal with that. We've got enough boys' toys to put out on the fire, but once it increases to a 2,000 kilowatt fire per meter or a 4,000, which is category 3, it's on your screen. It's very easy to communicate that we will not suppress those fires with delivering water with water trucks. So in my point of view, that's a way of dealing with the issue of, do we cool the fire by delivering water, or do we use fuel management?
Thank you. Okay, so if David Caballero is here. Hello, David. Okay, so we're gonna do, can you just attest? Can you just show us your presentation if it's working? And it's working. Okay, so let's go to Spain with Meteogrid and David Caballero. David is going to speak about models for fire risk assessment and mapping fire simulation.
Thank you very much, Rafael. I will spend some minutes with you just presenting some advanced tools and approaches to have an assessment of the fire risk in the wildland-urban interface, as we have done in recent projects that we have been participating in. One, and it is just started. It is a couple of months ago. It's fire risk, and may I suggest to have a look at our website, which is firerisk.eu. This is a Horizon 2020 funded project, which is focusing on extreme wildfire events. We are a bunch of 39 research entities, operation companies, administration, all glued together to bring some holistic approach to this problem of the forest fires, as we are witnessing today, looking at fire behavior, meteorology, landscape management, sociology, economics, adaptation to climate change, and any other subjects that you can imagine, and more particularly what is the effect on the wildland-urban interface, to which extent our communities, our societies prepare to face such extreme events. Well, this fire risk is having this holistic approach as many other projects. We are in the risk cycle management. We have looking at the danger as it is showing in the large fire events. We are having a deep look in all the components of the vulnerability in the landscape. We are co-creating capacity and resilience, and trying to design and implement national and European-wide policies. At the same time, we are trying to have a link to other risks and create a link with the climate and socioeconomic changes under these climate change scenarios. This other project, which is Intermed, is a small project which is funded by Interreg, Marittimo, France, Italy, region specific, looking into wildland-urban interface forests, that is working together side by side with the MedStar initiative. In this project, we are trying to articulate most of our approaches and methodologies into the very detailed scale, because we have, in our experience, the final administration sites is the municipality, which is receiving all the good practices, guidelines, tools to really implement in the real world all the assessment that we are providing. We are just having a couple of living labs in Sardinia and Italy and the southwest of France. And it's absolutely in line and unified with the fire risk procedures and methods. So we are working more or less in the same direction. This direction is looking at the wildland-urban interface as a twofold reading. First of all, we're looking at the wildland-urban interface as a risk zone, in which we have the impact of the fire and transmitting the fire inside the populated area and affecting the houses, population, infrastructures, and creating this post-frontal combustion and creating these domino effects. On the other hand, we are looking at the wildland-urban interface as a zone of opportunity for fire control and protection. Why? Because we have a fuel discontinuity, or we can design the fuel discontinuity with some fuel gaps. We can increase the moisture of the vegetation by providing these garden irrigation patterns, and use houses as shelters as many other factors which are positives. So these are the two views of the same landscape. For that, you can, as an example, you can see at this map of the normalized different vegetation index, give us an idea of the moisture in summer conditions. Here you have in the lower part, all this is a urban area. It's a well and urban interface, an intermix of pine forests intermingled with houses. You can see the index is telling us in this place in which we have periodic irrigation patterns, we have a much higher moisture in the trees than in the forest, which is not irrigated. So to some extent, this is creating this type of opportunities. To assess that, we have to go very in detail in the mapping, for which we applied a procedure for classification of the fields in the wild and urban interface. In the urban interface, we have the surface fields, the ground fields classified using LiDAR data and multispectral imagery to obtain the characteristics of the vegetation, including the gardens and the edges inside the urban areas. By doing so, we can classify very detailed, very fine fuel maps, and use those maps to obtain some kind of which is the fire potential, as we do normally in the forested areas. So we can understand that to specific parts of the landscape which are very relevant, particularly where the forests are meeting the urban interface areas, and how this intermingles with the vegetation, and extend that to the whole municipality, because we are trying to give assessment at the municipality level in terms of prevention and preparedness. Here you have a digital vegetation model at very fine resolution of 1 meter, the whole municipality, and the vegetation continuity. That means how easy it is for the fire to transfer the flame front into the urban area. We have created a number of indexes. One is the urban fabric continuity, to see if the urban area is an opportunity in terms of helping to stop the fire, or rather to transfer the fire through it. So we have defined, according to that criteria, the ability to transfer the fire and the number of houses potentially visited by fire. We have created different types of wildland urban interface patterns. These patterns, as I am telling you, are based on this very fine relationship, the characterization of the relationship between the houses or buildings and the vegetation, for which we use not only cadastre and other data, but very fine remote sensing and LiDAR data. For it is considered the 3 dimensions of the problem. Then we create this house vegetation friction index and the wildland urban interface index, including as well this continuity of the vegetation. Indeed, we can use these fine maps to create fire propagation models through non-uniform fields. Non-uniform means that we have some spots on the field map that which are non-burnable. So it is a probabilistic propagation in which this propagation algorithm is just computing the ability of the fire to jump over the non-burnable gaps. In this sense, we have this probabilistic approach, and we create a number of different scenarios, window scenarios with different origins of fire, and overlay one on top of the other to obtain the burn probability and the minimum travel times, as we normally do in other software solutions. Here you have an assessment of the type of impact which we are assessing, which is the type of impact, if it is a head impact, flank impact, or a back impact, backfire impact. And then the type of fire that is impacting the houses, and then the next assessment, which is the penetrability. That means how far and how easy is the fire to go through the urban areas through the vegetation, including the green edges on the gardens, which are as well characterized in the field map. We have done the same for large areas to see which are the runs of the fires before the impact and the type of impact. This is an example of an exercise done in Valencia, in which we have in the left flank impact into the house areas, flank impact in the case of the south wind, and the front impact in case of the east wind-driven fires. This is an assessment of all the considered scenarios, and then to provide means of protecting the houses at the very detail, and as well how the fire is progressing inside the settlements. With all this in hand, we proceed to the transformation of the vegetation inside the settlements by creating defensible spaces all coupled together, creating this fabric which is resistant to the path of the fire, but also a strategic axis like roads and railroads, and strategic cultivations and other lots. With all this, we create a pattern of discontinuities which is naturally integrated into the landscape, while at the same time we are preventing the fire to consolidate and to impact and create destruction in the wildland-urban interface area. To give more detail on that, we have proceed to the simulation of what is going on around the house. It is the micro scale of wildland-urban interface in the WeView project. I invite you to go to the website, in which we will find a lot of material to go through and get an idea of what we have done for 2 years. The project's over, but we are just transferring the results into other projects as mentioned. So we are looking into the very wildland-urban interface micro scale, what is going on around the houses, and which are the factors and processes which are leading into the destruction of or affectation of the structures. We are including the nearby vegetation, including the gardens and the garden moisture content in terms of how that is affecting the fire behavior and the flame intensity, but also other materials and objects, what we call the fuel packs, which are burning after the fire from the spas in this latent combustion for hours and affecting houses strongly. And as well, we are considering other effects on emergencies inside the emergency, like the effect on the LPG tanks. We have created a number of potential scenarios, high frequency with small consequences, the low frequency with high consequences, some specific problem scenario like the presence of LGP tanks or the presence of these fuel packs in semi-confined spaces like corners in terraces and porches in which we have these accumulations in heat as observed in real fires. As said, we have created this type of assessment of risk and vulnerability assessment through this type of tools, which is just a key to check and assess the different factors and processes leading to the entrance of a fire inside the structure and the destruction. On top of that, we have done several laboratory experiments in terms of how the gardens and other non-forest vegetation fuels are burning. This is something that has to be continued in the future, research on how garden plants are actually burning, which is the heat release curve, and also what we call the fuel packs, the residential fuels, how much heat release and which is the heat release and the effect on the nearby structures. To finish, we have created very detailed and sophisticated models, physical models, which are giving us an insight on how this can be modeled in the micro scale based on the results on the research on the laboratory, and more particularly the green edges. Green edges are transferring the fire very efficiently from one house to the other in a settlement. So we have created these models of the edges using FDS software and or used for the performance-based simulation, affecting the different vulnerable elements of a structure, particularly the roofs and the the windows. Another interesting point is that we need to feed these physical models with highly detailed 3D models of the whole environment surrounding a house in a 3D fashion. That means that we have created these point clouds using drones. This is a photogrammetric point cloud of the micro scale scenario in which you can see clearly the different types of vegetation, the density of the canopies, their relationship between the canopies, and the vertical and horizontal structure of the vegetation at a very detailed scale. When then we transfer that into the solution space, which is FDS software, and create scenarios under different wind conditions to evaluate which is the impact of the radiation, the flame impeachment on the fire embers and the smoke surrounding the house in the different scenarios. So we are evaluating these different scenarios under the high frequency, low consequences, low frequency, high consequences, and special issues, particularly which is the effect of the flames surrounding the LPG tanks. These are some examples of the output simulation, the physical simulations. Another interesting thing, just to finish my presentation, is that we have 3D models not only of the vegetation and the houses, which are more or less geometric, to say so, objects, but we have the outcome of the flames, smoke, and embers transportation as an outcome of the FDS models. And this can be transferred through this bridge software, tailored bridge software, to the virtual reality environments for training purposes. We have created in Unreal 4, using some tailored customized software, the geometry and the results of our simulations into these virtual reality environments, which are calculated in real time. These are extremely interesting in terms of providing a realistic environment in which all the objects are interacting, but also including the local propagation of flame embers following this, in this case, an Lagrangian Eulerian model of fire ember transportation. As well, we have coupled some good sources of information of real fires creating these environments of smoke and fire previous to their arrival of the flame front, and once the flame front is passing, and how you can feel visually with all these elements going on. Finally, we have coupled some of the latest services that we have at hand. We have a virtual world of Cesium service coupled to Unreal 4, which is giving us an access to the world, digitized world, in which we include our results of simulations, creating these realistic simulations of fire together with our models, which are obtained by photogrammetry, as I mentioned before. In this case, we are including virtual reality, the models, the 3D models, the flame and smoke models, and the terrain and other landscape as provided by Cesium solution. The next step is to include more generalized fire front and wind interactions in virtual reality, and provide an assessment for, let's say, digitized versions of the wildland urban interface areas. With this, I finished my presentation. I'm open to take some questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this interesting topic, David. It looks like there's no question for now. We will see if some will send us questions. So Theodore was mentioning just before, like 2 presentations ago, about the pyroconvective websites, and if he's available right now, maybe you could share us the website and show us what show us more information about this.
Okay, thank you, Rafael. First, I would like to say that I will share with you some links on the predictive services we have available, and we are currently in the process of launching a new site named fireweather.eu that will be available, let me share the screen, later this spring. And I need to share this one. Okay. So very briefly, I will share with you some of the services we develop. They are already operational. They are either implemented already for European countries, or they can be easily ported to European countries. So we do, as I said, we do operational forecasting of the Canadian Forest Fire Weather Index system. So this is the link for the forecast we produce operationally for the European domain. And for example, you can see it's for the next 3 days. This is the forecast for today. It was issued yesterday. And you can see it goes up to 3 days. You have all the components of the Canadian forecast weather index system. This is about fire weather index. We also do, I think Anna mentioned about the potential for lightning. We also have forecasts for lightning that cover all of Europe. Now we are expecting some lightning activity in a region because we have a low pressure system that arrives. We also do, for the European domain, we estimate the fuel moisture content of fine dead fuels using the methodology of Nolan, which is based on the vapor pressure deficit of the atmosphere. So we produced daily maps for the next 3 days of the estimated fine dead fuel moisture content, again for the whole of Europe and operationally. Of course, all these services are also available for Greece. Here we have we compute operationally from model data the Canadian Fire Weather Index from 3 different models for the next for the following 3 days, a modified version of the Nesterov Index, again from 3 different models. We also compute the Fosberg Fire Weather Index, and this is under construction. We also compute the Haynes Index, which is a kind of instability index for evaluating the potential for pyroconvection. One of the services we have recently developed and is based on the very dense network of weather stations that we currently operate is that we use the meteorological observations of our stations to get an estimation of the fuel moisture content. This map is in Greek, but what it shows you is the expected level of flammability of fuels, the actual level of flammability of fuels, as it is derived from the estimated fuel moisture content. So we go from the very low flammability up to the extreme flammability of fuels, which corresponds to a fuel moisture content that is well below 6 to 7%. And this map is updated every 3 hours for Greece, but if in any other region of Europe there is availability of weather station observations, it can be implemented and monitored there. Another service we have is what I mentioned is the IRIS fire spread forecasting model, and this is the fire spread forecast we derived from the deadly Mati wildfire we have in 2018. And the important thing here is that in contrary to more widely used fire spread models in fire analysis, like the fire analyst or any other model, this is a coupled fire atmosphere modeling system. It takes into account the two-way coupling between the fire and the atmosphere, so we can be aware of dangerous conditions. And another thing that we do is that based on the fire spread behavior and forecast of IRIS, we have launched a categorization scheme we have adopted a categorization scheme for wildfires. It's the 7-class scheme proposed by the DIM, which goes from 1 to 7, and the wildfires from 1 to 4 are considered to be normal wildfires, but wildfires from 5 to 7 are extreme events, and this categorization is based on fire behavior characteristics. For example, category 7 wildfires are characterized as firestorms. They have prolific spotting, and they are typically crown fires with very large fire intensities. And the Detlef Maushake wildfire was actually a category 7 wildfire according to this categorization scheme. So this information is also provided. This is our network of weather stations in Greece, so you can have that we monitor all over the Greek territory weather conditions, temperature, or basic meteorological variables, but we also monitor actual Canadian Fire Weather Index using our meteorological observations. Next, we also monitor specifically for evaluating the potential for pyroconvection. We have set up some automated procedures for monitoring synoptic situation. You have several models, and for example, at the European level, we can see that we will produce maps like this, which gives us an overview for the following days of how synoptic conditions will evolve and whether we are expecting dry, hot weather in a region, whether we have some disturbance arriving at a region that could change fire weather conditions and increase the potential for extreme fire behavior. This is also done operationally, and all these maps are available. What else? We have this is an example of the iris forecast we provide. This was for a wildfire in I think it was in northeastern Greece. So you can see the isochrones produced by the model, and on top in the Greek, unfortunately, you can see the predicted information we provide. We provide the category of the wildfire and some basic characteristics, like, for example, the expected maximum rate of spread. And let me see what else do I have here. And these are the flammability maps I showed you earlier. As I noted, we are currently in the process of migrating and integrating all these services in this new site that we expect to be launched soon this spring, and certainly before the start of the fire season in Greece, that is in May. And all this information, our plan is to integrate and collect all this information in a central point that will serve as a focal point for fire weather information, not only in Greece, but also for Europe. I think that's all. I don't know if you want to ask me anything.
Okay, thank you very much for
You're
sharing
welcome.
all of that. So we're just waiting to see where to see this websites, yeah, and go deeper. There's a question for David. So the question is how your studies are adopted in the real management organization of wildfires.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. It's good to see Giuseppe here. I was just answering by writing. I was telling actually that the result of these maps and all these assessments are transferred through the municipality level to the homeowners in the forms of guidelines to assess the vulnerability, the risk, and what they can do in terms of prevention and preparedness in case of a fire. So for us, the municipality level is absolutely paramount to work with them closely, because we are given a solid, let's say, background and framework to proceed with prevention planning and intervention. And another interesting point is that the virtual reality tools, which are progressing rapidly due to the cheaper devices that are in the market, are used mainly for the evaluation and assessment of the different fire scenarios that can happen at the municipality level, and then to train their response. And finally, for the homeowners to understand and feel what the forest fires look like and how is this to change the conditions in the phase of prevention to make the fire suppression and protection more efficient.
Okay, thank you very much for this answer. So now we're going to give the floor to Luca Tonarelli from Dam in Italy. Luca, you wanted to talk about Polygon methods in prevention and planification phases. The floor is yours.
Good morning to everybody. Thank you to the AFAN project, and thanks to Raphael for the invitation. You asked me to talk about this topic. I think also to underline the importance of analysis, not only, of course, in suppression, in emergency, and also in forecast, but like in this case, in forest fire prevention. I'm sharing the screen. After the terrible summer in Tuscany region of 2017, we create a new law, a regional law, to start a 10-year program of forest fire prevention with a new instrument. The translation is Specific Forest Fire Prevention Plan. Now, after 4 years, we have in Tuscany 20 approved plans in which interventions have begun around all the region, of course, in high risk forest fire place. The instrument is a real implementation prevention plan, and the aim is the analysis of multiple data to identify strategic points and actions to limit the risk and to reduce the intensity, the severity, and the extension of the big forest fire through forest silvicultural management of strategic points identified with the analysis method. Some characteristics of the plan are that they have no administrative and property limits. This is a very important point for us because in Tuscany and in all the region in Italy, we have a very high splitting of the property. It must study local fires and identify strategical management point. It during 10 years. It plans according a specific model. I will speak about it. Integrate local planning and dialogues with protected areas, reserves, and parks. Sets a guideline for local civil protection plans, and includes, of course, a very important communication plan to explain to the politics but also to the citizens the interventions and the main goals of this plan. The main goals are rationalize resources by optimizing the effectiveness of the interventions, protect population and houses, decreasing the risk, all thinking that forest fire prevention is very closely connected with land management. This plan is a mesoscale plan among the regional scale and a local scale. How we do this planification? Of course, studying, this is an example, Elba Island, is an island near the Tuscany coast, studying the orography, studying the altitude, the slopes, the expositions, and the hydrographic situation with the ridges, with the watersheds. And we pass to draw the polygons, to draw lines in the territory, and we divided all the plan in polygons, following generally four important variables: orography, of course, historical fires, the most common synoptic winds, and also local winds, for example, the sea breeze, using also a software like with Ninja, for example, and of course the fuel type. And so for example, we divided all the historical fires into categories: wind fires, topographic fires, convective fires. This is the map of the local big wildfires analysis, more than 50 hectares with this classification, and a classification of more little fires from 5 to 15 hectares in topographic fires, wind on the hills. Then we have a percent pie charts to understand the classification of the historical fires, and also the wind-driven fires, and so we analyze the direction of the historical wind that drive historical fires. In this case, for example, from northwest, we had 33 historical fires. So it's of course the most dangerous wind in this little region. Also, we study the behavior of the historical fires, not only the perimeter, but also the starting point and the behavior connected with also the synoptic situation of this big fire. The study of the synoptical wind, in this case, for example, we had a direction from northwest to the southeast, the intensity of the historical winds, and also the study of the sea breeze during all the day, 4 hours, 4 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 12, 6, 4, etc. And the common FWI risk. Then a study of the vegetation, not only, of course, the vegetation structure, but also fuel types and fuel models. This is very, very important to also to draw the polygons, and then created schedules about all the fuel models present in the plan area. Of course, we have to study the big fire, and so the strategical point to help us in big fires, but also a strategical point about wildfire urban interface risk. And so a study of the risk for houses, for a little town, and analyze the low, medium, height, and very height risk. And this is an example. Here is the scenario of the wind, of the northwest wind, and we draw, not in an automatical way, unfortunately, but drawing step by step, polygon after polygon, the behavior of the fire. So we put the green arrow when a fire passes from a polygon to the other in a low way, the yellow arrow in a medium way, the red arrow with an extreme behavior pass from a polygon to another. Of course, you have to draw all the plan. For example, here there is a dotted arrow when we can have a spotting that link to polygon not bordering. And in this way, we have a photo of the behavior of the big fire. We have some clearly direction of this kind of fire. Of course, we have to do this not only for one scenario, but for the most common scenario of fire. Here is another scenario of wind with direction southeast. It changes, of course, everything. You have to rebuild all the link, all the connection among polygons, and you have to find also the critical polygons in which arrive, for example, here one arrow and go out 2, 3, 4 arrow in other 4 polygons. You mix all this scenario and arrive to find strategical point in which you have to do some silvicultural intervents. In this case, for example, we have found the strategical point for 600 hectares, so the 3% of the total land in 10 years. Generally, we stay among 5 to 10% in 10 years is for us a good result. This is some kinds of intervents, full breaks, for example, road safety bans, classical silvicultural prevention in strategic points, of course, restoration on the forestal roads, restoration of open areas, replacement of species, generally deciduous trees instead of conifers, and also in some occasion assessment of or restoration of lakes, tanks for suppression. We create schedules of each management with a description, a forestal description of the type of management, and also a chronological, of course, a time schedule, a chronological way. And so we divided all the management into years. And this is some examples of the first management of strategic plans. We are in the coast, near in the south of Tuscany, in forest treatment in a strategic point, in this case, urban interface fire breaks. This is something similar, always in the south. Another strategic point, this is a node, an impluvium node. This is the line that underline the difference between the treated part and the natural part. This is always a urban forest fire breaks near in the medium part of Tuscany, always in the coast. Some photos by drone of the treatment of the fuel. This is a photo by the ground of the same areas, roads, and we start this silvicultural intervents in the last 2 years, and every plants now are going away. We hope to finish the plan in 2028, but it's important that the intervents will be done absolutely, because a plan without silvicultural treatment is no good, of course. Thank you. Sorry for my terrible English.
Thank you, Luca, for this presentation in Italian English. Do you guys have questions? Very impressive work. Yeah, this is a very impressive work that you guys done using the Polygon methods for prevention and management. There's also the use of polygons for operational version, attacking fires, etc. So we are at the conclusion of this webinar. It's the time to ask questions if you have, or just remarks. And I'd like to thank Luca, Theodore, every experts that talked, Jelmer, Anna, Detlef, and David, Theodore. Waiting for questions, and if there's not, will be the end of this webinar, this third webinar. Another question for Mario, thank you. Luca, from your position as an analyst, how you transmitted the necessity of an effective silvicultural work?
This necessity is not my work. Forest fire teach us in the last year that we need absolutely to try to suppress this fire, silvicultural work, real prevention, but we have a lot of problems. For example, the splitting of property, but also the resources, of course, because prevention cost, not like suppression, but cost. So we have to invest. We have to train political to show the consequence of big fires, and to convince that the land management is the best prevention for big wildfires.
Okay. I imagine in Italy there are many regulation policies that complicates the transformation to prevent, said Mario. Okay. So it's 12:12 a.m. It's time to finish this webinar. Thank you very much for all the participants, to all the viewers. We were 61 viewers, so it's very, very cool. There will be another webinar in March. Is it right, Celia? Is it in March? Okay, Celia is not here. So there will be another webinar. Just stay tuned on the Twitter of the AFAN Twitter and on our website. Don't forget also to fill out our questionnaire that is in discussion. Thank you, everybody, and see you next time. Bye-bye.